Now Cinco de Mayo is right around the corner, so today I'll show you how to make this tortilla warmer. It'll keep your tortillas nice and warm and also nice and pliable. All you gotta do is throw some tortillas in here, throw it in the microwave for about 30 seconds, and your fiesta is ready to begin. I'll show you how fast and easy this is to whip up next. Alright guys, so the things that you're going to need to make this tortilla warmer are 2 pieces of cotton fabric that measure 12 inches square for the outside, 2 pieces of cotton fabric that measure 12 inches square for the inside, 2 pieces of 100% cotton batting that also measures 12 inches square. Now I didn't have big enough pieces, so I went ahead and joined some together. You're going to need some wide 100% cotton bias tape. Now I happened to get a huge box of bias binding from a friend of mine, so I had this in there. This is some pretty old stuff here, and it just cost 40 cents back in the day. You're also going to need a circle that measures 11 inches wide. I just went ahead and made mine out of freezer paper, but if you had a bowl or a plate, feel free to use that. You're also going to need your sewing machine with 100% cotton thread. Because this is going in the microwave, you want everything to be cotton. So let's get started. So the very first thing I did was go ahead and make a template of my 11-inch circle. Now to do that, I was going to use this plastic compass, but it's a piece of junk. It does not stay tightened at all. So instead, I got a piece of string here. I tied a loop at one end. From that loop, I measured down 5.5 inches and stuck a push pin. So then all you have to do is get a piece of paper or some cardboard and then go ahead and trace out your circle and cut it out. Next, you want to grab your outside fabric here. I'm going to lay it with pretty sides facing down. You want to grab one of your batting pieces, lay that on top, and finally grab your inner fabric here. Mine really doesn't have a right or wrong side. If it does, you want the right side facing up. So now we have this little quilt sandwich here. Now I'm just going to put my template over top of here and cut it out. You want to make 2 of these quilt sandwiches, so by the time I'm done here, I'll have 2 circles. Now because I am using freezer paper, it does have a waxy side here, so I'm just going to hit it with a hot iron to keep my template in place. Just like that, and now I'm just going to cut out my circle. Just like that, and at this point it does not have to be that perfect. Now I'm just going to peel back my freezer paper, and I'm going to do the exact same thing to this square. Alright guys, now I have my 2 circles. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and throw some pins in here, just to make sure nothing moves on me. Just like that. Now I'm just going to set these off to the side for just 1 minute, and you want to grab your bias binding. Now we're going to want to cut our bias binding into some pieces here. So you want 2 16-inch pieces and 1 25-inch piece. And I've already got those cut right here. So now you just want to take 1 of your 16-inch pieces of binding, 1 of your circles here, and I'm going to sew this binding onto the edge. Now because mine's not folded, I'm going to have to sew it on, flip it over, and then sew it on again. But if this was folded, you could just kind of snug it onto the side here, and I like using a zigzag stitch and just sew on the edge of the binding. I'll take you over to my sewing machine and show you what to do. Alright guys, so what I'm going to do is open up my binding here, and I'm just going to stitch right in this groove. Make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Because this is a circle, it could be a little difficult. So what I like to do is just stitch a little bit, line up my binding with the edge, stitch a little bit more, make sure it's still lined up, and keep going until I'm done. Alright guys, and it should look something like this. Now it does look a little weird, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my binding over, and I'm going to top stitch this in place, and I'm going to use a zigzag stitch. So I'm just going to go a hair over the line I just made, and when I zigzag, I'm just going to zig off the edge and zag onto my binding all the way down. And as always, backstitch at the beginning and the end. Alright guys, so I switched my machine to a zigzag stitch. My length is about a 2 and my width is about a 2.5. Now like I said, I'm going to line up my binding so it's just barely over our first seam here. I'm going to make sure that the edge of the binding is in the middle of my presser foot. I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end and just sew this binding down. Just like that, and you want to do that to both of your circle pieces. Alright guys, so I have both my circles here, and they both have half of the binding sewed on here. The back should look like this, nice and pretty, but unfortunately on this one, didn't turn out so pretty. But I don't think the tortillas will mind. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to flip one of your circles over, and now we're just going to line up our other circle on top, making sure that our binding edges match. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw some clips in here just to make sure nothing moves on me. Now the next thing we're going to do is take our 25-inch piece of binding and we're going to attach it the same way we did this binding. Now as you can see, this binding is larger than what we need. So on one end here, I'm going to fold this binding over a ½ inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up about 1 inch and overlap my bias binding with the bias binding we already sewed on. Just like that. And I'm going to sew this on. When I get to this other end, I'm going to come up about 1 inch. So I'll have to snip off some of my bias binding. And you also want to fold down this end a ½ inch just so you have no raw edges. Alright guys, so I switched back to my straight stitch. I'm going to go ahead and sew this bias binding on and back stitching at the beginning and the end. Now it's going to probably make a horrible clunking noise because that is a lot of fabric right there in the beginning. But just go slow and make sure you don't bust a needle. Alright guys, so I'm coming up onto my other piece of binding here, and I went ahead and stuck a pin at the inch mark. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this. I'm going to go about a ½ inch past my pin, and I'm going to snip off my extra binding. Now I'm just going to fold this end over a ½ inch so there's no raw edges. And continue to sew. Now I'm going to switch it back to a zigzag stitch. I'm going to fold over my bias binding to the other side and then just stitch it down. And now our tortilla warmer is finished. All you got to do is stick a stack of tortillas in here, microwave them for a few seconds, and they'll be nice and pliable. This will also keep them warm until you're ready for your next burrito. This will be the perfect hostess gift, maybe with a jar of homemade salsa for any of those Cinco de Mayo fiestas. Or just really useful anytime you're having Mexican night. Like I said, in order for this to go into the microwave, you want to use 100% cotton everything. Thread, batting, fabric, and binding. Well, I hope you give this project a try. If you like this project and want to see more of my projects, go down below and hit the big red subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. If you have a question about this video or any of my other videos, or would just like to leave a suggestion for a future upcoming video, leave me a comment. Feel free to share this across the social medias. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.